Hello, hello. Thanks for joining this fifth edition of the Critical Features Talks series. My name is Andres Colmenares, and I'm the director of the Master in Design for Responsible AI, created by Elisava and the Creative Research Lab IAM. And as you know, we have been, since the end of January, we have been running this series of talks with some members of our faculty that have been visiting Barcelona as part of the program. We started back in January 30 with the writer Xiaowei Wang. Then in February, we had Nadia Piet from the AIX design community. In first week of March, we had the machine learning researcher, artist Caroline Sinders. Last week, we had Simone Rebaudengo, the co-founder of Oyo Studio. And today, to close this series, we're very lucky to have in the room Filippo Cuttica. I will let Filippo introduce himself. He has been working with the group in a very interesting activity that you will be part of. That's a teaser of what will happen later, but I will let Filippo to expand on it. If you have questions or comments or thoughts, we will be using this mic after the presentations. And also for those watching in the live stream, you can drop your questions and comments on the chat. And I think that's it. Thanks for being here, and a big welcome, a warm welcome, and a big one, yes, to Filippo.
Big right, is this one working? Am I beaming online as well? So let's see if this one works. Fine, I'll figure it out. Anyway, hello everyone. So I thank you, Andres, for the lovely introduction and the big and warm welcome. Thanks for having me here. To be closer. As part of this master, as part of this talk series. So I am a designer, I'm an artist, and I'm someone who works with technology, in particular with the impacts that technology has on our lives, on our politics, on our planet. And so today, please work, yes. So today I will share with you, I guess you can call it fragments of research, of thought and making and doing that I've done through the years, spanning through science fiction, material reality, politics, beliefs, and attempting to conjure some alternatives. So for a bit of context, and for those of you who don't know me, I am one of 4 co-founders of an art group called IOCOSE. With IOCOSE, we are very interested with the system of productions of meaning. So how do we believe the things that we believe in? And what are the mechanisms that makes us believe those things? We explore this through several mediums and media. So from staging fake protests using crowdsourcing, to staging the death of celebrities like Madonna, or inventing fictional drone influencers that post selfies on various social media. We are actually not strangers to Barcelona. We've been here in the past. I don't know if, does any of you know or have been to the influencers festivals? Anyone knows it? You were like, Andres, you were there. The name of influencer didn't age well. It sounds like a festival about TikTokers nowadays, but it used to be a really, really interesting festival about art guerrilla and radical communication. So we were on the stage on that in 2010. That's me feeling old right now, with one of our artworks, which was a fictional IKEA guillotine called Socom, which was a way of democratizing DIY justice. I am also a designer. I focus in particular in designing interfaces between humans and systems involving AI systems. At the moment, I'm working for Lego as a director for interaction design, exploring the role of interactivity in system of play. In previous role, I was at the BBC. I was the UX principal for ethical experiences. which is a total mouthful of a job title when you try to say it several times. But I was particularly focusing on developing responsible practices over there with a lens in particular on synthetic media. So generative AI before it became hyped. This was around 2017, 2018, 2019. And its role in misinformation and creating echo chambers. I will speak a little bit about several of my projects in various of those roles. I was also for a little bit in the UK Health Security Agency as the head of service design. We were focusing in particular on sort of health emergency responses, especially the digital side, and with a lens on inclusive design and sort of like digital inclusion more broadly. So a lot of my work sort of kind of spans between these two modes of doing and being. Sort of on one hand, the critical speculation, on the other, responsible innovation. And for a while, I have been one of those people that had a slightly split professional personality, like working in one mode or the other. But especially in the last few years, I have been kind of, my modus operandi is being very much the one of creating connections, creating kind of virtuous cycles, virtuous movements of ideas, of methods, of projects, in sort of a way of working that I've been defining, sort of provoke, intervene, and repeat. So as a way to, so on one hand, sort of exploring critically what could happen to then inform what should happen today and vice versa. And this has been a bit of a ethos that we'll also use in the class. I'm very excited about the fact that I got some of our students here today, and we're gonna have a little bit of a share about the class that we just had in the last 3 days at the end of my talk. So a little bit of a confession. This is not gonna be the sleekest talk, and this is not like because I didn't have time to prepare it, although it sounds like I am trying to cover my ass right now, but actually it's like by design. I think, you know, nowadays everyone can write a bit of a script, put it through ChatGPT, get it refined, whatever. I think it was really important for me to almost like show a little bit of my inner messiness when trying to grapple with complex AI systems. And so in this talk, I'm gonna share a few ideas, but also a few dead ends. And I'm gonna be, I think both are valuable and important, and I decided to leave them in. So with IOCOSE, we are very interested in the metaphors and languages that through which we think about the future, and the very real consequences that those metaphors and narratives leave on our present. So for a while, we became incredibly obsessed with this idea of progress fetishism. So we made a project called Launching a New Product, where we were quite physically launching products using a giant slingshot in the hands of consumers. And the consumers would kind of start an super ASMR, almost like sexual unboxing process. And this would be like an infinite loop that will repeat. And we often do this. We often like reflect on a language and turn it into a little performance. And we try and highlight what those metaphors and languages tell us about the time that we live in. So we were very interested in hearing this sort of like, again, almost fetishist sexual choreography between producers and consumers of tech and the space in between. We've also done another project called Spinning the Planet, where we try to accelerate the rotation of the Earth in several ways. In this particular way, one, we were anchoring a few rockets according to the Earth rotation axis, and we discovered that it's actually impossible to dispute whether we accelerated the Earth or not. So we claim that we got us closer to the future. Our most recent obsession is with the new space movement. So the new space movement, I don't know if you've heard of it, is like this kind of privatized Silicon Valley space race. It's also the name of several venture capitalist funds, as well as a few private firms. A couple of the most famous ones are SpaceX by Elon Musk and Blue Origin by Jeff Bezos. You might have heard of these guys. And so we became incredibly interested and obsessed again with the way in which space, in this case, gets narrated, and the future of space, colonization, a phrase that is used a lot in this context, gets narrated. And again, what kind of traces those narratives leave on our present. So we did a couple of artworks. One is called Pointing at a New Planet. And this is a disembodied hand of Elon Musk floating on top of extraterrestrial renderings of planets with a sort of karaoke song, which is actually made out of Elon Musk tweets. So again, reflecting on the very language that he uses to generate consensus, but also very, move funds and move resources through broadcasting, mostly via X, X Twitter. On another, let's see, this is some of the actual real tweets from Elon Musk that he used, that I found entertaining and interesting. In another video, another work of art called Free from History, in this case, is the hand of Bezos on different planets, sort of terraforming and creating these amusement parks on those fictional worlds. And this might seem a little silly and as an idea, but it is actually inspired by an interview by Jeff Bezos, where he said that he's got plan of creating shopping malls and amusement parks on other planets. So I guess in this couple of artworks, we've been interested in pointing the finger at those who pointed the finger. There is this quote by Bruce Lee, which I think he says something like, when a finger points at the moon, don't look at the finger, look at the moon. We did the opposite of that. We didn't listen to Bruce Lee. And we were really interested in asking the question, like, whose dream are we dreaming? Or whose vision of the future of space colonization are we all inhabiting? And what are the very real sort of traces that those visions are leaving on our present? It's super interesting, again, to look at the language in which kind of new space venture capitalist firms talk about the future, talk about space. The word disruption is used a lot. There is a lot of piece of statistics showcasing returns of investment. And it's all about kind of digital revolutions. It's all about accelerating digital revolution. We're going to space to accelerate digital revolution to create revenues. And so a big inspiration of this work was actually the work of anthropologist Lisa Messeri. She has spent quite a lot of time hanging out with planetary scientists and engineers, and what she's kind of she's produced a really interesting body of work, and a lot of what she speaks about is this idea that actually there is a massive kind of creative work that happened in the head of scientists and engineers who are thinking of other worlds, thinking of space, which she calls planetary imagination. So again, engineers and scientists kind of produce those planetary imaginaries based on surprisingly little pieces of data. Like when we're thinking of planets from other galaxies, at times the stream of data and the information that we have about those worlds is incredibly limited. And yet we have this very human and creative ability to generate full worlds, full images of those worlds. And so when we look at the new space planetary imaginaries, it's interesting to look at some of the characteristics that they have. They're first of all, frictionless. So space in those renderings is quite often depicted as completely empty. It's not just incredibly easy and achievable to start space settlement and to reach those other worlds, but often there is this complete kind of space vacuum that reminds me a little bit of the hic sunt dragones of the Romans. It's this other space that not only is there for the taking, but is also elsewhere, and therefore, for example, it can be filled with litter and space junk. But it's this other space that is not part of the is this in-between space that is there to connect from A to B. And this is one of the dead ends that I was talking about that I really didn't have a lot of time to explore more. But I've been collecting a lot of kind of diagrams that are used both by New Space Company and try and find similarities between those and other digital companies. And it's interesting to see, to me, though, how kind of the sort of ways in which organizations are explained to investors and to the public are very orbital, and vice versa. The trajectories that are, the diagrams to show the trajectories and the space colonization plans are quite simplistic, and in a way they sort of resemble one another. Again, a bit of a dead end, but I'm collecting those and those similarities. Another characteristic of those planetary, kind of new space planetary imaginaries is that they promote this idea of limitless growth. Finally, we are outside of the bounds of planet Earth, and we can go back to this notion. There is no more limits to growth, basically, you know? To quote Donella Meadows, is we are back to this idea of limitless growth, and therefore there is also an unchallenged growth. There is a bit of a promise that there will always be another planet. There will always be, we will keep investing towards something new, towards a planet X, basically. There is also kind of colonialism is another interesting kind of, it's got a comeback in this type of imaginaries. So there is a really good quote from this book called Space Forces by Fred Sharman. I don't know if anyone knows this book, has read it? No. So he says, colonization is another very popular kind of planetary imagination. The phrase space colony is often used uncritically. Its proponents point out that in inhabited outer space, there are no pre-existing people or other species to be colonized. However, this is a narrow view of the historical process of colonization. Colonization is a matter of forcible redirection of the whole system of social life, biology, politics, and material infrastructure is the ongoing production and maintenance of social hierarchies. So it's interesting how the use of those images and the use of those languages create colonial capabilities and colonial structure here on Earth. So the United States are kind of building kind of rocket launches bases from Brazil, which has created huge disruption, both in terms of ecosystem and indigenous population having to be moved. So once again, in this light, kind of like those colonial images of outer worlds are having a very real impact on this very real world right now. And so I guess one of the key points that I'm trying to make today is this kind of connection between imaginaries and capabilities and how those influence one another. So you might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with AI? And like, dude, do you have any other slide? So I'd like to propose this notion of margin intelligence imaginaries. I believe that we are kind of in a similar process in the world of AI. And so as we dive into this future where AI is going to be more integrated and more kind of like everywhere all the time, whose dreams are we dreaming and whose reality are we shaping? And what can we learn about kind of the capabilities that we are building today by analyzing those dreams? There is one of the books that I've kind of included in kind of as a reference in the course that we had in the last 3 days, Dreamscapes of Modernity. Anyone read it? You read it? Great. It's a bit highbrow. It says socio-technical systems a lot, if that's your kind of thing. That's a book for you. But it kind of like, so Jasanoff and Kim talk about kind of how vision of scientific and technological progress carry with them implicit ideas about public purposes, collective futures, and common good. And often those are kind of made implicit or hidden in between those narratives. And I think it's a useful exercise to try and uncover them. And so it's interesting to ask the question of kind of whose fingerprints, whose ideological and cultural fingerprints are on those machine intelligence imaginary, and what sort of collective purposes and public futures are nested within them. And so a lot of AI development, of course, happens in Western California in particular. And so it's useful to go back to this paper, The Californian Ideology by Barbrook and Cameron. And to me, the ideology, there is a bit of on page 1 of the ideological, the Californian ideology that says, at the center of the Californian dream, everyone will be hip and rich. So like there is the systemic sort of subtraction of the public is something that is a key component of the Californian ideology. Often the space cowboy like Elon Musk or the digital CEO or the AI CEO is portrayed as this kind of individual that had a dream and made it, often removing from the picture the fact that he was probably capable of achieving his dream or mobilizing such kind of massive amount of resources because kind of the structures of society led him there in the first place, right? But a part of the Californian ideology that I really find interesting is the connection between kind of digital innovation and spirituality that has been going on since the 60s in California. And there is this amazing story about one example of this connection between spirituality and technological development, which is the story of the Way of the Future Church. Has any of you heard of it? So the Way of the Future Church is an actual church that was created by this guy, Anthony Lewandowski. He was the co-founder and technical lead of Google's self-driving car program. So he's an ex-Google employee. And he's founded a church in 2019. He only lasted a couple of years, this church. And I'll go back to that in a second. And the church worships an upcoming AI god. So he's a church that says humanity is about to create this god that is coming. We better start worshiping it because it's going to be way more powerful than we will ever be. And he will know who's been on his side from the get-go. And so humans create worlds and we create God as well. And it's interesting to me to see how, this idea of this singularity that is coming, this upcoming super intelligence that is godlike, it's completely independent, is really like gripping. Like we're all spectators of this drama unfolding. Like everyone must have remembered when the OpenAI CEO, Altman, got fired for like 24 hours and then came back. There was immediately a big story about the fact that OpenAI had probably cracked the generalized, have done something, has got us really, really closer to this super intelligence. That the AI God is about to come. And it's actually really interesting because shortly after, the church got dissolved. And there is this big conspiracy theory that apparently it got dissolved because they know probably the AI God has arrived and we don't know yet. So I just kind of like love to see this unfolding. And so what are the characteristics of the AI God imaginary? First of all, the AI is an oracle. It's got all the answer for us. It's not something that is supposed to help us develop the answers. It's supposed to be something that will give us all the answers. It's something that we will outsource a lot of decision making, and in its own nature, in its own predictive nature, it will show us the path, show us the future. It's also detached from Earth. It's abstract, is disembodied, is something that lives in this other purely digital, again, frictionless space. Is made on our own image because we are the creators. So there is a little bit of a Genesis kind of mirror here. God made us on his own image, but we're making this AI God in our own image. And it's extractive as well, because let's remember that in particularly in Western religion, we are not one, and we are not one with nature. We are separate from nature, and we are here to control it and to dominate it. And so, if this is some of the characteristics of this AI God. What kind of capabilities that do dominant machine intelligence imaginaries shape? What are the real sort of traces that this type of machine intelligence imagination lives on our planet? Well, so one way of looking at it is to look at the work of Palantir. Familiar with the work of Palantir? Yeah. You know, predicted policing. So Palantir is a big sort of, they've been in the field of AI and large data computation and language modeling since 2004. They have several projects, kind of solution services. One of them is the tool called Gotham, which is basically a defense and predictive policing sort of infrastructure and system, which of course is being largely used to sort of like, what's the word? To reiterate existing biases, existing human biases, but to hide them in the, into the machine objectivity of the AI system. I was recently watching a talk by James Bridle, When AI Meets the Earth. Have you seen that talk? So where he describes a trip he had on the island of Epirus in Greece, and he comes across those kind of like holes on the ground and sticks on the ground, and he starts exploring what those are. And it turns out that they are a collaboration between Repsol and IBM, which they've created a supercomputer, an AI system that is mapping the Greek Sea, because the Greek Sea is being sold for auctions, for private companies, for private oil companies to find oil settlements. And so they've developed this mega algorithm called Pegasus Excalibur to basically, through seismic blasting, which is this operation of creating a true explosion to create blasts that will reveal where oil sediments might be. But they have completely outsourced this to the AI. So what was interesting is how those explosions are literally like the clothes of the AI, says Bridle, like a physical manifestation, a literal physical trace of this AI machine shaping the Earth. And there are lots of studies on kind of seismic blasts and while they're not great, but one of the things that they do is that they cause big whales and other kind of sea creatures that rely on sort of vibration to navigate to get completely confused, and there is a big sort of loss of biology and life related to this. So, okay, so if we are living on this kind of like in the age of those kind of AI God imaginaries and other type of dominant metaphors, what is the role of designers and artists when creating with and within those imaginaries? So I would like to kind of share a few strategies. One is to expose the cracks in those imaginaries. So I think there is a big sort of push or narrative towards optimization, especially in the world of design. So designers are here to optimize, to remove friction, to do things even smoother, and AI is here to help designers to remove friction even more. I would argue that perhaps the role of designers and artists is to do the exact opposite, is to put back some friction into those systems. Partially because when you invent the ship, you also invented the shipwreck, the good old Paul Virilio told us, and therefore actually to entertain each innovation negativity is a fundamental part of the design practice and of the artist practice, I would argue as well. And partially because I think it becomes really important to exercise this notion of sociological imagination. So to connect the experience of the individual to broader collective societal kind of changes, as well as the role of us as designers to broader societal consequences. So in this sense, showing the cracks of those imaginaries means projecting into the future and looking at possible implication and consequences of changes that are happening today, helping kind of bridging the experiential gap between the applications of today and the implications of tomorrow, so that we can bring them back in through material reality today and have better decisions, right? I did a little bit of this in my sort of design practice as well. This was me, well, this wasn't me, clearly, but it's a project of mine that I did at the BBC where we staged every month a newsroom of the future, trying to expose various, trying to imagine various possible development of externalities. So this was an exercise of kind of doing a little bit of horizon scanning, looking at trends, and then imagine 5, 10, 20 years into the future and looking at possible development. The sort of stories and articles were a mix of AI generated, but also we could tap in one of the best newsroom of the world at the BBC. So it was also a bit of a human and machine collaboration. But the idea was to actually put decision makers into the room monthly. So the guy on the left-hand side was the CTO at the time, and it was one of my colleagues on the right-hand side kind of talking them through. The idea was to develop a certain muscle, to do this continuously, and to make sure that the people who were making decisions around technology adoption and development were kind of constantly provoked and inspired by those stories. So when doing those type of exercises, and this is something that we covered in our class, I talk a lot about the need for both achieving sort of a future breadth and depth, where the future breadth is the exercise of imagining multiple outcomes. But I think the depth part is what makes it really resonate for me. So I got a bit of an example to illustrate what I'm talking about. So in 2005, this is an image of the aftermath of the Hurricane Katrina, which was one of the deadliest hurricane in US history, which kind of devastated New Orleans and the Gulf Coast of the United States. So Rebecca Solnit on Harper's wrote that, you know, the most hellish image of New Orleans was not the battering waves of late. I never able to pronounce that lake name, so I won't even try. Or even the homeless children wandering raised highways. It was the forgotten thousand crammed into the fetid depths of the Superdome. And what most news outlets failed to report was that those inferno were not designed by the people within, nor did they represent the spontaneous eruption of nature bred in tooth and claw. They were created by the authorities. So in that sense, Katrina was a failure of the dimension of future's depth. You know, the hurricane threat was known in the abstract. That need to imagine that part of the United States is one of the highest level of hurricane threat all year. So there was actually a lot of thinking that went into the possibility of a threat of an hurricane. However, there was a failure of thinking deeply and systemically about the consequences of that. And therefore, there was a failure of anticipation. Like a lot of the problems that were created in the aftermath could have been prevented by an exercise in depth of thinking and anticipation. And so this is something that we've done in the class, is this idea of imagining futures in the abstract is not really enough. And in a way, this is a direct counterthought to the idea of AI gods and AI imaginaries, which are those images of AI as a powerful metaphor, but they are incredibly abstract. And when designing responsibly, to link back to the topic of the very master that this talk is part of, it's only staying in the sphere of the abstract is not enough. It's not helpful enough, and it's really important to really like situate ourselves and really like find ways to materialize future consequences so that we can make better decisions today. We have a few examples of those, by the way, for you at the end of this talk. So when I was at the BBC, we did a little bit of this. You know, this is not the real picture of a prototype that we did because it's NDA protected. So I asked Dolly to recreate it. But the idea is that we were looking at the impact of synthetic media on news, on misinformation, on echo chambers. And so we made a fake prototype of a 24/7 synthetically generated news feed, which was entirely based on the individual. And so the way we created this experience was to really to highlight some problems around echo chambers, privacy concern, misinformation, and quality control, editorial accountability loss, and other issues. We did all of that because we were developing an internal piece of policy and governance, which is publicly available in the open, by the way, which was the BBC machine learning engine principle. So we were using those fictional prototypes to directly impact bits of governance and decision-making within the organization that were driving then the development and adoption of those technologies. One example of those is the app BBC Sounds, which is an audio app that we developed at the BBC. And the app was one of the first examples to utilize a kind of proprietary machine learning algorithm generated by the BBC. And the algorithm was generated following the machine learning engine principle, which followed the previous prototype exploration. And therefore, it was one of the first algorithms that was trying to actually actively break filter bubbles. So they were still using personalization, but they were trying to promote a healthy media diet by proposing content that was actively challenging points of view, for example, or was opening up horizons, or all sorts of other ways, other strategies. So the reason why I show this is to show a little bit of an arc from the critical speculation to the responsible innovation that I mentioned originally. And so another strategy or ways of doing that designers and artists can adopt while dealing with machine intelligent imaginaries is to show alternatives through the cracks. So we, crack the wall and show the alternative behind. So I really love this quote by Ursula Le Guin, one of the favorite of mine. The exercise of imagination is dangerous to those who profit from the way things are, because he has the power to show that the way things are is not permanent, not universal, and not necessary. So in this sense, actually, kind of the strategy is not so much to look at future implications and future consequences, but is to do so that we can question the starting point, or to reperceive our present, to get somewhere else. And so what if we did that? What if we were to change the premise of AI imaginaries? So we said earlier that, in current sort of AI God imaginaries, the AI is an oracle, is detached from Earth, is made of man's image and extractive. What if we were to create AI systems that were collaborators, inextricable from Earth, and embracing new ways of being and connective? What will it look like? So even when we do artworks with IOCOSE, I never really want the people to leave the exhibition with the sense that those pictures that we're painting are totalizing, that those dominant narratives are inescapable. That's not what we're there to do. And so we're there also to show kind of fragment of alternatives, almost like they infiltrate the dominant images of the future. So we did a piece of work recently called Critters of the Space Unite. It was inspired by the really long list of animals that died in space exploration and space experimentation. Laika, the dog Laika being probably the most famous of them. And again, going back to that book, Space Forces, there is a bit in the introduction where Fred Sharman says, to live somewhere is not to simply to take part in parallel temporary coexistence with others. To live is also to be born, to come of age, and to live is even to die. So from that point of view, actually animals died in space experienced space to a deeper degree than any of the astronauts. There is actually only 3 astronauts that died in space up until now, but there is a really long list of animals that died there. So in a way, they had a more visceral and deep experience of space than humans have ever had. And so we created another series, again, Critters of the Space Unite, where we started imagining, it's connected to the Free From History video, where we are on the aftermath of those failed amusement park projects on various planets, on various fictional planets. But in those futures, kind of those animals that were sent to space, sent to space never died and evolved to become the sole inhabitant of those amusement park. And so we were trying to quite literally kind of overlay kind of opposite views to the one proposed by the new space proponents in this case, by showing this part that is often hidden, or again, the friction in putting back the friction in the frictional space, something that is often left out by the renderings and the big images of the future of the new space proponent. We were quite literally trying to overlay them on top with a magnifying glass to show, to bring them to people's attention. And again, it sounds quite crazy that we keep using this idea of amusement park, but I just want to stress that this is a real thing that Jeff Bezos is proposing and would like to build. And so, again, you know, what if we were to kind of develop systems and capabilities starting from a completely different starting point? We were having a chatting class about this today, where, you know, what would happen if AIs are there not to provide answers, not to do all the fun stuff, but they're there as a way to start thinking, as a way to really build the capability into the human. And I haven't got like a project that showcased that explicitly, but it's something that at LEGO at the moment where I'm working is very much kind of in the forefront of how we develop play experiences. And I think it's really interesting to draw a parallel between system of play and AI systems. So I think LEGO is kind of one of the best toy companies in the world because they focus on play starters. They focus on this idea that is a system of play that doesn't give you the answers. It doesn't give you the story. It's all there as a way to give you material to develop your own story in your own imagination. This is something that internally at LEGO we frame explicitly the difference between play starters and play lead. And if an experience is leading too much, that's not good enough. It's not a good enough experience. And so I just go back to Deep Blue winning the first, chess game, or AlphaGo winning the Go game. We are creating machines that not only are play lead, but they win against us and they suck away all the fun from our experiences, right? While what if we were to create systems that were there to develop your critical thinking, develop your skills? What if they were there to generate kind of like further capability within your mind? Another project that I would like to share is not one of mine. It's it's another one that I think showcase what an AI system or an AI product could look like if we were to start from these different starting points. Is NukaBot. There is some weird music playing. So NukaBot is a kind of little computer that connects humans with brain microbiomes. So it basically has got a way to understand what the microbiomes are doing within the brain, and through a sort of AI assistant, and it kind of speaks to you, and is a way of connecting humans to those microorganisms. What is interesting about that project in particular is that it's a clear reflection of how AI can lead to very interesting result if it's not conceived in the abstract. Like in this particular case, it's almost impossible to separate kind of the AI function from the microbiome, from the physicality of the object, from the context, from the house, because the robot is also capable of understanding the humidity within the house. So it's an incredibly embedded and contextual and embodied AI system, which kind of creates a completely different image of what an AI system could be. And I seem to have messed up my slides a little bit here. So what is interesting here as a way of thinking of AI is again moving from this very abstract layer to a very concrete layer. And if we're looking at kind of AI in their complexity as a complex interrelationship of humans and technical factors and data movements and contextual decisions that human operators need to make, human labor that sort of feeds the data in the first place, et cetera, then all of a sudden kind of responsibility, fairness, inclusivity, sustainability, transparency, and safety, those are all emerging factors. They're all emerging properties from this system. They're not something that can be fully baked into the AI. They're not something that they are sole responsibility of any given human operators. They are more like those emergent properties. And it's a different way to look at things. And then the final strategy or bit of advice is to do all of this collectively and repeatedly. And I've got a quote from a friend of mine and collaborator, Stuart Candy, and he talks about integrating critical, pluralistic, and high-resolution futures awareness into governance, organizations, and culture through design, media, and the arts, being mission critical. And so the idea here is to kind of how do we make sure that this ability to generate alternative vision and to materialize them becomes a muscle, becomes a capability in itself. And so me and Stuart, we have actually paired up and worked together, and we have created this design jam, this process called the Futures Bazaar. So the Futures Bazaar is a process that can be done in the span of an afternoon, 3 or 4 hours, that takes kind of a group of people from imagining, creating, and experiencing several different futures collectively. And the idea was very much kind of inspired by the Cathedral and the Bazaar book, kind of one of the sort of books that kind of inspired parts of the open source system movement. And the idea is that every stall of the bazaar will represent a different future state, a different trajectory. And every object on the bazaar, on the stall, will be a different question, a different provocation, a different insight about any of those futures. And the idea is that a bazaar is a very sort of multi-dimensional organism. It can be, you can have one stall or a couple of stalls or 20 stalls and it still works. So the idea was to do something quite modular, but also something that the metaphorical container allows for all sorts of weird and wonderful manifestations of those futures. And so we have created a sort of an open source kind of downloadable toolkit that can help various teams and groups to do exactly that. So I'm gonna stop here because I think I've talked for a little bit too long. So I'm gonna jump to my conclusions. So as I mentioned earlier, so imaginaries really impact capabilities and vice versa. And it's really interesting to me to look at those metaphors, so those images of the future that are dominant, that are prevalent, and the way in which they make us believe about the futures that are to come, but also about the type of impacts and capabilities and very real traces that they leave on our present. Again, those claws of the machine. And some of the strategies that I share with you is to expose the cracks in those narratives, to show alternatives through the cracks, and to do it collectively and repeatedly. I'll stop you here. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so do we do question first? No, we do presentation first. Okay. Yeah. Right. So, as I managed to figure out my tech, before we jump to a Q&A, so I've got a few of my students over here. So we thought we would give a little demo of the course and some of the outcomes. If I manage to come out of full screen. There you go. Cool. Right. So I'm just going to give you like a mini introduction about what we did in the last 3 days with the students, and then I'm going to leave the stage to them, and they're going to present a few of the outcomes. So this was the part of the 6th module of Designing for Responsible AI. I think it's the last in-person module that the students had here at Elisava. The course was called Crafting Fragments of Tomorrow, Storytelling Through Critical Artifacts. And it's been a bit of a deep dive into a lot of the stuff that I talked about in my talk. So critical speculation, explore through materiality, aim at collective reflection. So we've really put materiality, I feel like, at the very center of the last 3 days. We have kind of fought with materials, through materials, and now we're going to communicate to you through materiality. And the idea was really like to engage in some of those critical reflection kind of exercises. We were trying to situate ourselves into this sort of critical thinking layer of this sort of critical inquiry ladder. So we were not there to try and imagine cool new concepts or way to solve problems, but we were also not there to go to sort of aid some philosophical meanderings. We were very much trying to exercise some critical thinking and look at some of those shipwrecks of the ships that are being created today. So we explored a little bit of these notions of future breadth and depth. So we explored a few different types of futures. I'm gonna leave the students sort of narrate the stories of some of those futures, but we also explore some of the future depth. So the students were in a situation themselves, role-playing, which I'm gonna kind of tell you what it is in a moment. And we really kind of try to facilitate the bridging of the experiential gap by thinking of the stuff that will be in those futures. So a big hard constraint that I gave the students was they weren't able to bring back from those futures anything that contained technology. So objects and products and anything technology enabled would have been fried by their time machine. So they were bringing back fragments or artifacts or basically the detritus of tomorrow. And this is for multiple reasons, partly because it was a fun constraint to just see them struggle with this, but also because we were really trying not to look at future applications. We didn't really want to think of what new applications there would be. We were only focusing on the impacts, on the implications, on the various societal, environmental, and political impacts of imagined future changes. So the situation or role play that the students have been kind of playing within in the last 3 days is this fictional advisory group called Aigua Futura. I don't know if you see what I did there with the AI. It was one of the highlights of my preparation for this course. So they were members of this Aigua Futura sort of advisory group comprising environmental experts, community leaders, technology ethicists, and they were commissioned by the Barcelona City Council to address the growing concern over water scarcity and its exacerbation by increasing demand from the AI data centers. So they really explored basically the connection between data centers and water scarcity, a very important and prominent topic here in Barcelona. And so they were tasked to sort of inform kind of choices and decisions and sustainable solutions. And what they've done as a first exercise is to explore future implications of different policy and innovation choices to engage the council in critical reflection. And so They will roleplay as Agua Futura. You guys will roleplay as the council right now. Okay? Awesome. All right. So I'm just going to invite you guys on stage. I'm going to leave you space. Sure. Or you can use that one as well. Yeah.
I don't know how to turn it.
I'm assuming. Yeah, it's on now.
Okay, so I work together with Ella and Noor, who's not here this evening. My name is Diane, and we developed a future 2035 where agricultural runoff is now used to cool data centers instead of fresh water. So in the last 10 years, the cost of fresh water has immensely skyrocketed, and there's this new tech that's been developed. It's transferring or converting runoff from agricultural farming practices into a data cooling liquid. So this opportunity we identified requires policy, and I'll show you our first artifact from the future, which is a newspaper. Our headlines show that the city council has enacted some policy, I have it here too, to prioritize local produce to get the buy-in from the farmers, and so they'll have benefit in the food markets, and this is so that farmers cooperate with this change. There's lots of change that's required, and data centers are also incentivized with policy, so they're incentivized to invest in this, building this infrastructure, the infrastructure that's required to allow the conversion of runoff to data cooling liquid. And then I'll share with you our second artifact, which is a water bill. This is a water bill of one of our pilot data centers that bought into this project. The cost of runoff cooling liquid is much, much, much cheaper than it is as fresh water to be used as cooling. Our third out of 4 artifacts is a map. And so this change brings some disruptions to the accustomed order of operations. It requires also public buy-in because there will be disruptions. There's going to be construction and potential changes in the available produce in the food market. So there's this importance of public knowledge. This map shows the first 4 data centers that have bought in and invested in the infrastructure for data cooling liquids on farms. New jobs would be created for the building the infrastructure, as well as transporting the liquid from farms to data centers. And finally, we have our orange, which is our last artifact of the future. This shows the boom in the buy local movement. There's pride in local, there's support of local farmers, but it does not come without risk, right? So there's risk of competitive disadvantage within the local farming community. So if any farms have access to barriers of investing in this change, then are they going to benefit less than those farms that do have the data cooling liquid? And another risk also on the data center business side is will data centers take their business elsewhere? If Barcelona is imposing these policies, then maybe we'll have less data centers business. Those are our 4 artifacts. Thank you.
I reckon we do all the groups and then we open up for questions for everyone. For me.
Hello.
Hello. Ooh, loud. Hi, I'm Miranda, and I was working with Carly, and we enjoyed catastrophizing on this scenario, which we've called private disaster, which is essentially in 2054. We're imagining a scenario in which all of Barcelona's water supply is just privatized. And it's managed by the data centers because they need to use so much of it, and the city council is very tied up with commercial interests. But as a result, there's been lots of innovation around different kind of hacks for saving water, and some kind of community groups have evolved to address the problems. So our first artifact is in fact an email. Oh, in fact, it's oh god. It is it's a jar which contains a single calçot, because I guess everyone here probably knows, like, there's a really wonderful Catalan tradition of eating these like long green onions, having a big feast like in the kind of winter, early spring, and we're imagining that in 2054 this will become an extremely scarce luxury item. And the tradition of having a big feast of many, many calçots is going to have shifted to kind of sharing maybe one pickled calçot and talking with your family about the beautiful cultural heritage that used to be in Barcelona. So, yeah, the next item of trash that we've got is future fodder. Is terbutain. So this is a drug to manage UTIs, and we sort of picked this to speak to just the different health issues that people might suffer if water becomes the kind of thing that you've got to really ration yourself on in the Barcelona area, and yeah, to speak to the kind of personal effects and how they'll be pushed onto individuals and their bodies. The next one is dry toothpaste, and this was sort of part of, we were imagining what different hygiene practices could look like if you really had to avoid using water, and we thought this was quite a visceral one to think about, because it's such a horrible idea having something dry in your mouth, but yeah, also showing the innovation that might come out of this. And then the final one, in fact, is an email for your promotional birthday shower, because we're imagining that citizens have to sign up, and like much like you have a phone contract, you also would choose your water provider, and we're imagining there would be family plans and strange little perks, and one of those might be that you would get a free shower on your birthday. But we really went to town and had fun with the terms and conditions, because obviously in this nightmare scenario, nothing comes without a price. Thank you.
Okay, are you comfortable? Yeah. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Marta, and we together worked on a third scenario. So in our scenario, it's 2040, and the trend and need to build more data centers is growing because of the AI development. But we already know that more data centers equals more water and energy consumption. So what we can do to address these needs and concerns? So our scenario is a transformational one, and we are trying to change gears to challenge the status quo. So we wonder how the data centers can contribute to the environment and the local community in Barcelona. So in our vision, in 2040, we can go back, yeah. 2040, the data centers have become green hubs, as you can see on the attached image generated in Midjourney. The green hubs are equipped with solar panels, they are equipped with water-saving systems, And what's important, they are designed as shared public spaces full of flora and fauna. So now we can present you our artifacts to paint a more vivid story of what the green hubs are and how it went, how our idea went. So the first artifact that we see here is actually a snapshot from the job board with job offers. And we found this artifact interesting as it shows two things. First of all, in 2040, green job boards dedicated exclusively to responsible, sustainable job offers are extremely popular, as you can see, green job offers. But also new roles are emerging to address the new needs of our society. So in our scenario, we picked up two new roles, two new job offers. The first one is water system maintenance engineer that might be needed to actually develop the green hub, but also green spaces community manager, a role that might be needed to help maintain and grow the green hubs and also take care about the well-being of people that are hanging out there. Now we can move to the second artifact. And here we can see a sachet of seeds of a plant called photon blossom. And it's a plant, it's a fictional plant, but maybe in 2040 there will be a real one, who knows. It's a plant that photosynthesizes using both sunlight and artificial light, used to light up the rooms in the data centers. So it can be planted outdoor and indoor, but also its soil is irrigated by water utilized to cool down the data centers. So what it tells us is that the green hubs had closed loop water systems that serves both machines and plants. So we brought this artifact to study the seeds biogenetics and also to investigate how plants are being engineered to adapt better to technology and how the plants are supposed to coexist with the technology. The third artifact, yeah?
We have also the multidimensional travel experiences card. It's the access card that you should use to access the Green Hub, but also Metrobus, museums, parks, and other knowledge places, because in the future, they believe that all of it are means of transport, and that that everything is an experience. So you travel through space, experiences, and knowledge, from subways to green hubs. And we selected this to remember that in the future, culture, knowledge, and leisures are considered as means of transport. Here we have a snapshot from the surveillance birds. Since surveillance is a big question to green hubs for its existence itself, the idea of using birds came up as the best idea, because it's going to keep being a data center. So there's the political interests of having this security, but also the surveillance in a high level, are going to bring us to this point, as we need to have birds doing the surveillance. And we have the levels of threatening here. So just showing the activity or what's to be reported. I added a layer of attack, but Marta asked me to remove. So the point here is to understand how deep we are going to keep criticizing surveillance, because it's not something that's going to be solved in the future as well, maybe. And here, after the some surveillance questions and problems, but not only, Also, the first promises that the green hubs made as a project, that they were going to reduce their carbon emissions, but not only to save water and this kind of things. They chose to have their data open to public, and then public started to use it as the aesthetic background of posters in the protests. So here we chose this artifact as to see the positive and negative impacts of offering this open data to the population, and see how the debate can rise from it, for example. So the point right there, like we can track your line, for example. That's a big point. That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, those were just a few examples of the outcomes of the course. Thanks again to the students. I've had a blast in the last 3 days, so big thank to you. But,
So we have a few minutes for questions or thoughts. Want to start here? If you can please briefly introduce yourself and then follow up with a question or comment.
I'm Ricardo. I'm retired already, but thank you for a very stimulating presentation, all of you, 5 of you. I have 2 very short comments and 2 very short questions. One is, first comment is, what will happen if instead of saying we're creating gods, we said we're creating idols? Because saying we're creating gods has a certain resonance of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What will happen? Of why not say this?
Yeah, of course.
Second is related to one of the last presentations. You probably know that the owner of Amazon has just bought a nuclear power plant on the side of the data center.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one possibility, which is a bit disturbing, probably, taken into account. Then the second comment and question goes, there's the 35th anniversary of the web, more or less today, or more or less this year, and Tim Berners-Lee has published a paper, an open letter, actually, saying 2 things. One is related to your subject, saying what has happened couldn't be imagined, which is probably not true, but we can learn of what happens not having imagined it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third one, the final question is related, some of the, not in your talk, but some of the talk from the students, there was a connection between the design and the thinking and the imagination and political results. And there is an immense gap in the middle. How do you see it from your experience?
Mm-hmm.
How to close this gap?
Mm-hmm.
Because saying, for instance, publishing data that things are not working, that not necessarily move the.
Yeah, thank you. Nice questions. Yeah, I would say on the Tim Berners-Lee thing, which I love the article, first of all, I would say that it would be great if we get to a point in society where instead of saying, if only I would have known, we could say, if only I would have imagined, right? I would say, I would question that it was impossible to imagine. I would say that it hasn't been imagined systemically enough, right? But yeah, not a good provocation. What was the other question? The connection between the design and the individual and the political, is that what? The God and the adults, absolutely. So I am definitely not a proponent of the of the metaphor as of the AI God. I think that's just one possible imaginary, right? If anything, what I'm proposing is that we should produce several alternative models to think of AI, and the idle one, of course, yeah, that's. I would even say maybe let's even go past that. And what if they're not idols? What they are, if they are systems or flocks of birds, or what if they are part of the soil. I don't know. Are there different ways in which we can imagine those systems entirely? Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
There.
Hey, thank you all for the lovely presentations. It was really engaging. I'm Bori. I'm a design strategist who is on the lookout to relocate from Copenhagen to Barcelona, basically for the sun.
I did the other way around. I used to live in Barcelona and I went to Copenhagen. Why?
Hope you enjoy it. Yes, I have two short questions to you. The first one is, you mentioned this like frustration how designers and artists often focus on productivity or like forced into this segment of having to design for a better, faster future. In some of your like preferred future scenarios, what would be the guiding principles for designers to design for? Like in a couple of short words.
Add friction, not remove it, and make the seamless seamful. I don't know if that's a word, but like seams and frictions. It would be something that in the world of AI system that are both incredibly complex, incredibly opaque, and again often they are terminal in the sense that there is a expectation of providing answers from them. What if those things are kind of procedural in a way so that we co-create solutions with them? And what if there are ways for us to visualize how decisions are made? What would it look like? So frictions and seams seem to be two things that designers can add to design, to AI systems. And I think, again, some of the things that I talked about, so questioning those images of the future, creating problems, like problematizing them so that we can design them better. No, you know, but so finding the right questions to ask, I would say. And really do that loop between that critical speculation and the responsible innovation. I think, you know, like close that loop between provoking and intervening and repeating would be the other kind of modus operandi that I definitely find myself falling in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, food for thought, I guess. And then the last one is mostly just because I have this thought recently that I think preferred futures can only be done in like multiplayer mode. So like you need to find the right people to collaborate with. So maybe you can just add some like historical story on how you met your artistic group. How did you guys come to be? What was the guiding vision?
I don't know how many lessons we can extrapolate from that. We've always been 4 of us, and we started working together in 2006. And for the longest time, none of us was in the same city. So we were like a completely distributed kind of other people are internet artists because they work with the internet. We were exclusively working through the internet, on the internet between us.
Did you guys know each other from like school before? Or
they all met university, the other 3, and they started the group. 3 months later, I joined, and to this day, I am the last arrived. Like I'm, you know, the latest addition, even though I'm only like 3 months later. But yeah, I think it's cool that that's the only mode of doing art that we all know. Like in terms of, we all do other stuff around it, but in terms of an artistic practice, we have exclusively worked with each other, and that's all that we know. And we often joke and say that each of us is a quarter of an artist. Like it's just the 4 of us that makes a full artist. But I completely agree on the ethos of what you're saying of it's the multiplayer game. I would say the Future Bazaar example, like the trying to lower the bar to entry to collective thinking is something that I'm really passionate about. And how do we empower, how do we give tools to groups to think more systemically and collaboratively around futures is something that I believe in. So, but yeah, no, good observation.
Yeah, cool. I just gonna pass it on. I guess you had a question, right? Okay.
Good question, Bunny. At the pub. Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. So, well, just wanted to give a big thanks and warm thanks to Filippo and to the participants that were on the stage today. I hope that all of you had a chance to touch the futures that may be in front of us or not. And this is, it has been a really amazing opportunity to be able to share with you here and the ones that have been here in the past editions of this series, but also watching in the live stream, the recordings and everything. It's literally hundreds of people that have been able to engage in the kind of conversations and thinking and methods and research that we have been doing in the master. So it was like a shared ethos of Elisava and IAM to try of bring that outside of the classroom. And we will continue to do that. We are in the process of producing a podcast and a newsletter, and so we are constantly looking for ways to share all these topics that we consider important, and this pressing need to think of AI systems in ecological, social, technical ways as systems, and where everyone needs to have a voice. And that's it for this first season of the Critical Futures Talks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you. Amazing.